everyone. I'm Kitu Kasungola. I'm one of your festival interns for this year's Encounters Festival 2021. And I have the privilege and honor of being joined by one of our directors for one of the films that's on the lineup this year, Jamila Janna. She is a master's candidate at Stellenbosch. Why do you want to call it Stanford? Are you going to Stanford, girl? One day, just throw it out there into the stratosphere. She's a master's candidate at Stellenbosch University. She's a marine biologist, an ocean ambassador, an ocean saver. She's a short story writer, a poet, and now she can also add filmmaker to her list of capabilities. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Jamila. So, Jamila.
Thank you.
You have always loved writing. And I mean, this is something that comes out or comes across very beautifully right from the start of your film that we are privileged to have on our lineup. It's called Hluleka. And the film begins with a poem that you wrote. Why or how did you come to choose the poem that you decided to include in the film? Because I imagine you have many poems that you've written in your lifetime.
So interesting story about when I wrote this poem. I remember it was in 2016, my grandma passed away. And we went to the funeral, which was held in the Eastern Cape. And I think for a long while, I think 6 months, 8 months after the funeral, I didn't go back to the Eastern Cape. And I just kept on dreaming about visiting the Eastern Cape. And I kept on dreaming about my grandma. And eventually I told my mom, like, Mom, I think Nkumbula Ekaya, and like I've been having dreams about grandma, and it was such an emotional thing. And she was like, we should go back to the Eastern Cape. And then she made a trip possible for us to like visit home. Just, I think, yeah, she was going to sort out some issues at home. And then we went and visited where my grandma used to stay, and being there just brought so much peace and serenity. It was emotional, but just being there, it felt right. And whatever anxiety I had from the passing of my grandma and those months spent until that point we had visited Ekaya had disappeared. And it was very, very nice to be there. And I felt very emotional. So when I got back from visiting Ekaya, I was going through the pictures on my phone that I had taken of just the landscape and everything. And the poem it just wrote itself, honestly. But it was something that really inspired it was my grandma. And I guess it was a memory of her as well, because as much, I don't know my family's history that much, but they were very close to the land. You know, they harvested cattle, they herded cattle, they farmed, things like that. So they were very close to the earth. And that was something that I could relate to with them, even though I don't know our closer history that much. And it's something that I'm constantly learning because I grew up in Phoenix and we spoke English predominantly and things like that. So it was definitely inspired by that link that I think it's always passed down our family, and that's the connection to the ocean. I mean, the connection to the earth. And ultimately, that's how my interest into the ocean space and marine and just the curiosity about what the ocean holds, all of that, I think, was just passed down from my ancestors, even though I don't know that much about them, but I feel connected to them through that. And that's where Transkei, the poem, came. And it made sense to also apply it in the film since it was based in the Eastern Cape.
There is definitely something very much about heritage, very much about a call back to our roots and where we come from, definitely in the film that we see quite evidently. And I mean, for me, there's so much in a name that also carries a lot of heritage. And I mean, if I look at your name, for example, Jamila Janna, in English, if we were to translate it, it would be a beautiful paradise. You know, what a beautiful name that you have. And so how did you choose the name for your film? Because I know initially you had wanted it to be the Wild Coast Wallflower, and then you decided Hluleka, but you still included the Wild Coast wallflower. How did you choose that transition? What informed it?
So I remember doing my research about all the different marine protected areas in South Africa. I'm like, okay, we know about Isimangaliso, we know about Tsitsikamma, we know about the big famous ones, right? But what's the history and story of the smaller ones that we gloss over when you read about that? We don't talk about that much besides the fact that, oh, they're protected and they have beautiful diversity and it ends there. What's their story? So eventually Hluleka caught my eye. And a descriptor, actually one of the paragraphs, one of the articles that I had read called it a wallflower. And I was like, okay, that's nice. It actually is a wallflower. It's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful covey area with beautiful beaches. And it is the Wild Coast's wallflower. And I'm like, okay, this makes the perfect title. And then somewhere further down the line, and I guess with what was happening, there was the Black Lives Movement. There were a lot of conversations happening, COVID, all of that. Eventually, I was like, you know what? I don't want the name to be in English. That I'm certain. I don't want it to be in English. You know what? We will all learn and say Hluleka, but it will be about Hluleka and we will title it Hluleka because I think let's honor it for what it is. Let's honor it for its name, that it's in the Transkei, it's a Xhosa name. And let's call it what it is. It is Hluleka. Let everyone, whether they're Xhosa speaking or not, try and say the name and honor it and know it as this marine protected area in the Eastern Cape that is the Wild Coast wallflower. But we're not just going to be saying the Wild Coast wallflower. We know the name, and it is Hluleka, and it's to honor. It is genuinely to honor the place, to honor the people, and therefore why I decided to just call it Hluleka. And the Wild Coast wallflower then is just like a descriptor for it, and yeah.
Okay. No, I think that's a beautiful reason to name anything what it is and to continue to pay homage to it. I am curious about your journey though, from science into filmmaking. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Ooh, okay. So I remember getting this SMS in 2014 saying that I was accepted for marine biology at UKZN, and I was at my friend's house and I started screaming. I know genuinely that the first thing I wanted to do was journalism, but marine biology also looked like just a great opportunity. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I love biology. I'm curious about the ocean. I'm definitely going to study this. And first year, I found myself between lectures. I would sit in the hallway waiting those 15 minutes and take out my laptop and start just writing these short stories. So I always had this thing to want to write. And then eventually, you know, second year, it got more hectic. I didn't get time to write. But I always, in the back of my head, the question was like, how do I incorporate what I'm learning now eventually into writing, maybe even journalism? Like, okay, maybe I could be like a journalist for Nat Geo. That's an option. We hear about Nat Geo and they talk about the wildlife, and you know, you have people working in the creative writing space and talking about science. So there is an opportunity for me to go into that space. But that was it. I just knew Nat Geo. And it so happened in 2014, I was part of a program called the Ocean Steward Program. And what they do is every year they have a new cohort of marine biologists who have not gained any experience or have not worked on the boat, have no research experience besides the experience that we've learned at the university. And I was a part of that, and they told us that we were invited to something called Youth Congress. Actually, no, let me backtrack a little bit, actually. Before we attended Youth Congress, I believe, I had gone to a symposium and I had presented my research. But because my research project was so difficult for me sometimes to understand, I had to make it easy in the presentation so I could explain it to people. So I used a lot of cartoon animations, use puns, whatever I could use just to describe the project and make it easy for people to understand, because you know what, I don't understand it that much as well. But Youth Congress was there, and Youth Congress is a Congress, well, youth in particular is a community for nature, environment, wildlife, and filmmakers, basically, and you all can get together and collab and work together and whatnot. And they were there looking for scientists who could automatically enter the competition and become a finalist and present their research in the form of a film at the end of the whole competition. So it just so happens that they saw my presentation, they loved how I presented it, the presentation, whatnot. And then they asked me that at the end of that day, whether I'd be interested in being a part of this competition. I'm like, yes. Yes, I would be. I first went and confirmed with my supervisor if she'd be okay with it, but then I was like, yes, I'm happy to do that. So that's how I actually got into the filmmaking industry, I guess, and into filmmaking. And then after that, I then had attended Youth Congress, and there I saw that, oh my gosh, there is a space to be a scientist and still do creative work, whether it's in the form of filmmaking or different concepts of storytelling, and it's possible. I remember the first Congress that I had attended, it was at the Durban Botanical Gardens, and there were these phenomenal scientists from across Africa sitting on this platform talking about their work, and I'm like, yo, how do we not know about these women who are doing such amazing storytelling, yet there are scientists and mothers and all of this, and they're merging their science, whether it's on lion and elephant poop or whatever, they're doing something and they're converting it into stories. And then I was like, okay, you know what? It's very much possible. There is a whole community of these people. And that's when I was like, you know what? I know that no matter what I do in the science space, I can definitely get into the filmmaking space as well. And I could also go very far because there's so many people and people who look like me that are doing it.
So
I hope I answered the question.
No, you did. So it's safe to say we're going to see more films coming from you in future. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Well, let's get through the masters first. I wish you all the best with that. And I'm sure everyone at home will enjoy the film. Please do check it out, Hluleka. It's part of our festival lineup this year for Encounters. Jamila, would you like to share your social media details so that they can follow you, maybe find out what's coming up for you, what you're working on, and support your endeavors?
Okay, so for my personal social media account, it's Wanderlust and Art. So Wander, WANDER, Wanderlust and Art. And I'm Jamila Jannah on Facebook, Wanderlust and Art on Twitter. And the film itself is just Hluleka Film on Facebook and Instagram.
Great. So you can follow those pages. And then for us at festival side, we are on www.encounters.co.za. There you can find the full festival lineup and all of our social media handles so that you can follow us. And then we will continue to see each other everywhere virtually. Thank you so much, Jamila, for joining us today. Thank you so much for you and all who are watching and engaging with this Q&A. And a big, big thank you to Encounters sponsors and partners for 2021. Hope you enjoy the festival, guys.